I wish I could turn back time and start using headphones the way I'm using them today. Paul Third recommended something to me a while back. He hit up me in my DMs and mentioned something to me, and I feel like a monkey because I didn't listen to him. I was just sort of blinders on. So stick around because there's quite a bit of research and data points I'm going to call on for that. But also feel free to sign up to the newsletter in the description below, because when I do a researched video like this, there's a lot of peripheral information which doesn't necessarily fit in here, but I share in good context with all the newsletter subscribers. So be sure to subscribe to that down below. Anyway, I was sent these by Head Audio headphones too. The only reason I agreed to take them on is because I used to have Adam A7 7Xs in this studio, which use AMT, air motion transformers. So I enjoyed those speakers, and what I thought was, is this like getting my old pair of speakers and duct taping them to my head? What is it going to sound like having AMTs on my ears? It's interesting, and we're going to go into the technology and the way they're built and how they affect the way this creates sound, because it's a very unique listening experience. Anyway, these headphones are 41 ohms, and they specify the need for an amp with a minimum power output of 200 milliwatts and recommended of something greater than 1000 milliwatts. So I went out and brought a Topping DX7 Pro to listen to these on, because if I'm going to assess them properly, I'm going to take the manufacturer's recommendations and use an amp that can power them accordingly. The first time I put these on, I listened to a master I did for Jasmine Cheffis Jones, and the song is called Bad Habits. You can check it out on Spotify, and this is a gorgeous song. The production is amazing, the mix is amazing. The low end, when I listen to them on these, were extremely accurate and neutral. And it goes really down low into the low octaves, this mix and this master, and it reproduced it with beautiful detail. All the drums, I could hear the stick definition, the hammer action in the piano. These were beautiful, neutral, and great. But, and a big but, because I like to break things, I was curious. I wanted to ignore the headphone amp recommendations and just go straight to my MacBook Pro, because in the studio is one thing, but I like headphones for being on the road. And how did they sound when I threw them in the MacBook Pro? Well, they sounded like somebody had put a subtle harmonic saturation across the mix. Not like an effect, but think of it like when glasses fog up or your windshield is foggy in the car, but like an audio version. So it still had the same sonic characteristics, but it just didn't have that clarity. Now, this is where things get interesting, and it's not necessarily to do with these headphones. The MacBook Pro is what I drive my MM500s with, so that made me want to test the MM500s on the new DAC headphone amp I actually got for the headphones too. And when I did, I was really surprised, and this is actually how I've been using headphones wrong the entire time. And I'm just going to quickly touch on this DAC because there's some really juicy technical details I want to share on these headphones, which I'll get to, but I need to just talk about this DAC quickly. Now, even though Paul Third recommended to me the DX7 Pro a while back, I did nothing because I had this arrogant, who cares? The oddities are low impedance, and I'll just use the laptop headphone outs because, hey, Manny Marroquin says it in an interview, who gives a shit? I'm just going to use those headphones there, and it'll be sort of well enough. So now I've got this graph up. It shows what I've been taking for granted. See, here in the studio, I've got my Antelope converters that go out to my Neumanns, and I've got a really great DAC monitoring system set up. Whereas with headphones, because I always use them on the road, and I had the Odysseys, which are low impedance, I'd power them from the MacBook Pro and not think too much about it. But we can see here, and I can even put the plots of graphs for the harmonic distortions, the MacBook Pro versus the Topping DX7s are worlds apart. Like, they're completely... In fact, the MacBook Pro headphone out is not usable for audio production or critical listening purposes. But what was crazy about this, so if we actually get into the comparisons, the Focusrite Scarlett, I don't think is quite usable given its specs there, especially as a headphone amp. The Topping DX7 competes with the RME ADI, which I think is great. Like, that is the RME, sorry, to compete with a unit that's almost double the price is incredible. But then even further and above that, the Lynx Hilo, which you find in a lot of mastering studios, it outperforms it in every spec. So a $700 DA converter outperforms the Lynx Hilo. Now, granted, the Lynx Hilo also has AD in it and an LCD screen and a few other features, but the crux of what you're using it there for as a monitoring solution, the Lynx Hilo doesn't compete with the DX7, period. Doesn't. So this, at the price it's at, is something I just wanted to share with you because Paul Third shared it with me. I was stubborn about it, but these data points and actually using this is incredible. And the thing is, when I'm actually using it, everything is so clear. It's not like it has a sound. It has absolutely no sound. That's the beauty of it. It's not like you feel like you're listening to a particular brand of converter or a particular tone or character. It is as bland as it gets, and that is beautiful for working on records. Now we have to get back to actually talking about these headphones, because that is what is the catalyst of this whole video is about. Now, as we get back into these headphones, we're going to get super geeky. So you need your calculators out. You're going to need a notepad. You're going to be scribbling stuff, because it gets really interesting, this whole transformer design. Previously, I've spoken about planar magnetic headphones and how they exploit ultra-thin diaphragms and the sonic benefits of this. If you haven't seen that video, here's a video on that technology you can go click on. I'll just leave a link up there. So pretty much all transducers use a piston-like motion where the diaphragm moves in and out, and that moves air in a 1-to-1 ratio. So the diaphragm velocity equals the air velocity. The headphone 2 is very different. Air motion transformers is a folded diaphragm, okay? And it squeezes in and across a lateral plane. The efficiencies of this technology is that it exploits total surface area to minimize excursion of the diaphragm and achieve roughly 4 times greater volumetric displacement than a planar diaphragm, whereby 2 NAC is the volume displacement of a single plane diaphragm, where C is the amount of excursion, whereas 2 NBD is the volume displacement of an AMT or air motion transformer, where B is the depth of the fold, which creates the effective diaphragm surface area, and D is the amount of excursion. So what does this exploit and what does this solve? So one of the distortions headphones are at the mercy of are the excursion of their diaphragms and the breakup modes and resonances that result. Because AMTs naturally require less excursion for the volume displacement, the efficiency of the driver results in lower distortion characteristics across the board. But there were some aspects of the headphone 2 which I couldn't find answers to online, so their head of R&D helped answer these questions. And I'm going to lay these questions out before I actually go into using these in a session, the things I found about it and the price and everything that comes with it, and whether I feel like that's an equitable exchange for somebody in the studio. The first was about VVT. They talk about variable velocity transformers, and I wanted to understand what aspect of the transformer is variable in velocity as a result of VVT, and why. Variable velocity describes the different velocities of the diaphragm segment that each fold geometry produces. Our diaphragm is a very long ribbon that gets folded into 24 folds. Each fold is defined by its width and depth. The deeper the fold to its width, the slower it has to move in comparison to the wave it produces. So a deep fold width will move slower than a fold with less depth. This is important to be able to create a full range driver, since different fold geometries are responsible for different frequency ranges. So instead of just a uniform set of folds like an AMT driver would be in a tweeter on a speaker, they actually vary the folds and the widths and depths of them in order to create a full range driver. So last week I had 5 mixes to get through. I had these headphones on the side as I'm researching them and putting this review together. I thought, I'm going to do a whole mix on these. Just going to throw caution to the wind. It was pretty dangerous because for me to just use a whole new system to mix a song, it could go completely tits up. Anyway, listening to them, they're super detailed and clean and sterile in a good way, not like a hyped bass or a warm tone. There just is what it is, which I'm used to with the Neumann 310s. This was the one thing that happened though when I put them on the Neumann 310s, which I wasn't happy about. It's not the headphones' fault, it's more user interaction, is that they were so clear in the mid-range, like so hyper clear. I could hear, there were guitars and I could hear some resonance build-ups in the guitars. And it pushed my hand into maybe making a few too many cuts in the mid-range to the guitars, that when I put them up on the speakers, I was like, oh, it's lost a bit of its jazz, it's lost a bit of its tone. So then I had to end up toning back those mid-range cuts. And they still sounded great on the headphones, but because everything is so clear and so neutral, it was really easy to be overcritical. That's not a criticism of the headphones. That, again, is user interaction with them. But that was one thing I noticed. That said, today I actually had to do a revision on that mix and sign off on it. And when I put the mix back up, because it's been about 4 or 5 days since I sent that mix off to the client and I played it, I was like, holy shit, I mixed these purely on headphones because I put them up on the speakers. I didn't have the headphones on. I also have a job I got to complete. So I worked with what I knew was familiar, and I realized that mix actually sounds great. Like, it honestly, when I first finished it, I was a bit uneasy about it because I didn't know if it was a bit of imposter syndrome or unsure about using a new tool. But this morning, actually listening to it, I was like, holy shit, I mixed that on headphones in a couple of hours. These are a great professional audio tool. And I think these are going to just sort of stay at the studio because I've got the sit stand desk now. I can throw these on and confidently make decisions on them. Here's sort of where it's important for me as a reviewer to be openly objective. Okay, so we've got the headphones, and I honestly can't even remember the price. I'm just speaking on my experience. I got to make sure I got the price here. How much were they? Headphones Audio 2, headphones 2. Okay, so in Australia they're $3,500. In America they're $2,000. Plus you got to get a good headphone amp or have a good headphone amp. They're not cheap, but they're a good solution for pro audio monitoring. Are they a mobile solution? No, I'm not going to say they're a mobile solution, but something I did notice they did, which sort of annoyed me on the MM500s, and this is they did on the headphones, which I thought was great. The first thing are the jacks, no 5-pin connectors. I think that is pro audio studio. You don't use 5-pin connectors in pro audio, as in like audio application as a pro audio engineer. You just want to be able to get in, get out, and click them in and out. So that's one thing they did, which was good. The other thing, let me get this up here. You get this box. You get 2 boxes, but you get this box with even the 3.5mm cable, all the connectors for 5-pin, all the adapters, everything, separate muffs, everything, all in this box. And the reason why I think this is really good is because when you get the headphones, one moment, I'll put this down. When you get the headphones, you're not dicking around trying to find a new adapter or trying to find a cable. I had to do that with the MM500s. I still love the MM500s and I'm going to keep using them too. But it annoyed me that when I got them, I had to go order another cable with 5-pin connectors to put it all together for my 3.5 jack for the MacBook. Whereas with these, for this price, it's a full solution. You buy that, granted you need the right headphone amp to drive it, but this is I think it is a great solution, albeit it is, I will say honestly, I can't be jaded and say this is cheap. It is a professional product. That said, if you're a professional who maybe works in a studio and needs to get to work from like a home office as well, like as in you commute to the studio every day and then you're at home on the weekends, what you're not, you need a solution, you don't have the space for speakers. This is a pro audio solution. Granted, you need the DAC, you need a good headphone amp, but it is a fair, equitable solution that you can work proficiently on. So that wraps up headphones in general. The headphone 2s, I think the technology in them are great in terms of how they portray sound is right to my tastes as an audio engineer and as a mastering engineer who wants to hear detail and get in and just hear clear. No color, no tonality, just as it is. They did a good job. And I also want to, on the back end of this, thank the CEO at Head Audio and the R&D. Now, why am I thanking them? Not because they sent me this pair of headphones, but because at every stage of me having a question or being curious or sort of pressing them on some of their claims, they responded. And I think that's incredible. I'm not touching any plugins or audio gear unless people are willing to discuss, divulge, communicate, be challenged a little bit in some of the questions I'm asking, because if I'm not just, and how do I put this? Being on YouTube, I think I have a duty of care to not just be a pawn to push out products and services and plugins at will for other companies as their free marketing. That's not the way I am. I want to be passionate about the products which I use in the studio so I understand them and I'm using them professionally. But then when I make a recommendation, I want it to be based on my thorough research that I would give regardless if this was a video or not. So this was a beautiful sort of thing to look into and understand, and I got a little present for myself along the way, which was the DAC, which I'm so happy about as well. So there you have it. I hope this helps you understand a little bit more about these headphones. If not just the headphones, the topping DAC, which shout out to Paul Third. You really came through on that one. It only took me a couple years to jump on board, but I eventually did. Anyway, with all that said, I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, take care.